So that was a recording of last year's graduate group.
in actual fact, Kent's not too far off. That's actually Lydia Muschamp, who was one of our graduates for the Bachelor of Teaching and Learning in 2013. So he's actually not too far off the mark. All right. So yeah, sorry, when I copied this out, it's Naiwie is the one that's repeated, not the Kia Murad. All right. Naiwie. Cool, so just a Whakatūki to start things off. Whai te iti katarangi, ki te toa koe, me he mana taite. Pursue excellence, should you stumble, let it be to a lofty mountain. Remember that as you start your teaching. You're going to be doing a whole lot of stuff that's unfamiliar to you. You're going to be trying new things all the time. We're always aim high. And just a wee quote, I think, from Goethe, which I think is very important. Things which matter most must never be at the mercy of things which matter least. So we're going to actually practice that now, right? I want you to practice this word, right? No. Right? After three. 1, 2, 3. No. Right. I guarantee that is probably a word that you will very, very rarely use in your first year, but you need to use it at some stage. At some point you need to know your limits, and while you want to be accommodating, and while people will ask you to do things, and that you want to do it, there comes a point where your bottom line is that you actually just have to sometimes say no. And you've got to say it without feeling any shred of guilt. So we're going to do one more, we're going to do a completely guilt-free no. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. No. Excellent. Right. Now you've got to say it with that kind of conviction when you know that you just loaded a little bit too much and that you just have said yes just those too many times. Excellent. Good. Okay.
Well, we've set the ball rolling, and have we got the film happening? Yes, so we've got all of our flow people on board. So I'd like to welcome the flow people who are here in the room. And I also want to welcome those flow people who are joining us a little bit delayed, but via the recording. So welcome to you all, and I hope you have a very profitable and enjoyable day. Cool. Ken, hand over to you.
Okay, so we'd like to also make a very warm welcome to two principals who have arrived, and I'll introduce them to you. And we're just waiting for Charles, who's probably, as you know, always late.
Yeah.
All right, so these are building blocks. first of all, about yourselves.
All right.
Well, I suggest you sit in the middle.
Okay.
Because you
Right,
get the roast
between
between two thorns, but we've just only got one thorn.
So
Charles
perhaps,
is going to do a solo.
Yeah.
oh, you've got coming shortly.
I've got the mics going.
So,
Would you like to just start and give us a bit of information about your career and the school?
now this microphone's not for these, it's actually for the recording. So if you could just either clip it on or hold it and then just pass it on to Graham when you're ready.
I might hold it. Kia ora koutou. My name's Lisa Dillon Roberts. Thank you very much for having us here today. I graduated from Dunedin College in '94. I found it very difficult to get a job. I did what a lot of you might be doing and sent off a lot of packages. And along the way, in the first few years, I learned a lot about what I might have done differently with some of those packages. I had my heart set on coming to Christchurch, but actually found that a very difficult market to get into. Here he is, ready for your solo. Welcome, Charles.
Kia ora. Charles. Why are you standing? Doesn't he get a sing? Now he's the other thorn. The rose between two thorns, we thought.
Charles leaving from
Avonhead.
Yeah. The closest school to
I
here.
just actually want to tell you something. Graham and I know each other from a very long way back, and I love telling the story, and I just actually want to share it with you. But
Charles, we're still introducing ourselves.
Graham and I were living beside each other. I was living in a back flat.
Oh, flatting
I was
days.
living in a back ownership flat in Kent Place, and he was living in the front, a nice house in the front. And just across the road, there were some very, very noisy students, not the kind of students that are here, but very, very noisy students, and they're thumping music, and oh my goodness, I'm a light sleeper. So I thought, no, blow it. About 1 o'clock in the morning, I thought I'm going to ring the noise control people. So I rang, and nothing seemed to happen. So I rang, and nothing seemed to happen. Well, I think the third time that I rang, they actually took the sound system away, which was really good. Now, the thing is that they didn't know who it was, and they were quite sure that the people that had done it was across the road. So they got all these eggs and egged his house. I was the one that complained. I thought, well, that's good.
And Diane and I never heard any of the music. You weren't taping that, were you?
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Well, that's a good principle to follow. Make sure the yolks on somebody.
Well, the yoke was in
I would never have rung.
So I'll just carry on.
Yeah, sure.
This is welcome to my world. So I applied. Obviously, I applied at Invercargill, and I went down and had an interview for a permanent position down there, and I didn't get that, and I was very disappointed. And about a week or two later, the phone went, and the principal who had interviewed me for that, as often happens at schools near the end of the year, something else had happened on his staff, and he said, we'd like to offer you a fixed term position. At the same time, I was also offered a fixed term position in Dunedin. And I made the decision to go to Invercargill because I felt that I'd spent all my life in Dunedin, and it was a new opportunity, and I was just, you get that feeling when you walk into a school and you meet people, when you're interviewed, and I just had a really good feeling about going to Invercargill. So it was a bet that really paid off. It was a principal who was very committed to giving young people opportunity and leadership, which I was hungry for. So he had employed 5 beginning teachers in a large school for 500 students in an intermediate. And in the second year I became head of music. In the third year I became head of year 7, leading a team there. And then from there I went into an acting principalship in a small rural school for 2 or 3 terms before doing my OE, which I'm glad I didn't put off. I was offered the permanent position as the principal in a wee U1 school, but I was very eager to, having been at school for so many years, it seemed, to go and have my adventures. So I went and lived in England for 5 years, in that time, I think it's what you call a rubber arm. It kind of, you try to sit on it, but it still keeps flapping up every time an opportunity is offered. So I became a deputy principal in the borough of Westminster over there, and then I went into a team of teachers who, because right at that time the British, the English Ministry of Education was implementing literacy hour and numeracy hour. So they asked for a team of teachers, New Zealand trained teachers, they called us a star team, and we were going into schools who had been Ofsteded, which is the same as Erode over here, who had statutory managers put in place, and we were to sort of sort out some of their curriculum issues. So I did that for a wee while, and then I taught at a private school, led a small team there, and then came back and thought, I'm going back to university to do law, which was interesting. And then a little U1 principalship came up again, and when I went to meet the community and the children there, the school was in quite bad shape, and the children hadn't had very many opportunities for a number of years, and it got under my skin again. So I said, I'll have a wee go at this and see if it's still for me. And 3 years later, I went from there to a bigger school in Dunedin, and 3 years ago I came. So I've been a principal for 11 years now, and I've probably been in leadership every year except the first year that I taught. I've learnt a lot along the way, and I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've been very, very lucky to have been around and been mentored by some absolutely fabulous people who I've learnt a lot from. So if you do want leadership and you're ready for it, it is there. Surround yourself by good people. If you want some years in the classroom, doing your thing and honing your craft before taking on any other leadership responsibilities, that's just as wonderful a thing to do as well. So it's really whatever suits you and your personality and your characteristics. So I wish you well with that. That was very long-winded, I'm sorry. You're not getting a turn. No problem. Graham.
You can hold the purse. I don't know quite what to say after that introduction from you, Charles. I've been in Christchurch for most of my life, since I was 7, and I graduated, and you'll be able to work out how long that is when I tell you, I suppose, but I graduated from Teachers College in town, the town site, and that was in 1974, and started teaching in 1975. So I've been in education since I was 5, so that's 55 years. I haven't left school yet, and I'm still learning. And I've been a teacher for 40 years and a principal for 25-something years. And all of that principalship has been in Christchurch or around Christchurch at 3 schools. And I was very intrigued with the use of the word no. Lisa and I sat there and looked at each other and said, we're still learning to say no. In fact, we don't know how to say no, because we've just been talking about the fact that we're both working till midnight 5 or 6 nights a week at the moment for this year and next year, and I've got a few added things on my plate that actually make that even more difficult. I'm on the local Principals Association, but I'm also on the New Zealand Principals Federation exec. So I spent Friday, Saturday, Sunday in Wellington. Although Sunday was a nice day, my wife came up as well, and we ended up having lunch at Martinborough. We went over to the Wairarapa for the day. So that was my day off, the first day off for a month. But basically, it is a busy job. But to say no is an important skill. I think I got told that when I left college as well. And it's how you do it, rather than, I think, and it's really important to talk to people around you all of the time that you're growing into your career, and be just prepared to say, not necessarily the word no, you use that in your head, but you say to these people, actually, can we look at the things that I've got on my plate at the moment, and maybe I'd like to, we have a discussion with you about prioritising. And, and if you really are struggling with something, I've had people come into my office and they've used the word no, and I've sat and listened. They've intended to use the word no, maybe that's not the word they've used, but that's the intent of it. They're just under the pump. And we spend all of our time looking at people and trying to work out where they're at and to assist them. We're good at reading where people are. That's my reintroduction, I think. Charles, you've already introduced yourself.
The complaining neighbour.
Unbelievable.
I'm sorry, every time I see you, Graham, I always think of your egged house.
Yes, and you do share that story too often, Charles, that's really honest. You guys want to ask questions, don't you?
Thanks, Charles. We'll just hear the
Right, I probably had the same kind of, I have some slightly different experiences. I trained in Dunedin Teachers College, and I applied for Southland, and I ended up being at Longford Intermediate in Gore for 6 years. Loved the place. It was a really great place, and of course I've got a strength in music, so I could do all the kinds of things that I really wanted to do, but I felt that my goal was to get up to Christchurch, and I applied for a job up in Christchurch at Heaton Intermediate, and I came up to Heaton and started doing all the music things there, and I really enjoyed the place, but there was one senior teacher who really peeved me off. He was such an inadequate person. In those days, you actually became senior teachers, not because you were good, you had good leadership ability. You managed to get a green report or something. You could convince an inspector with the occasional visits that you were capable of going up on the green report. And eventually you did, up to a top 7. I don't think he ever had a top 7. But anyway, he was the senior teacher. And I just loved the place, and in the 3rd year I asked the principal if I could have an upper stream class, and he said, yeah, I'm very happy to do that, but you're going to have to work in a kind of an open plan classroom with this senior teacher. And I thought, well, I can make it work, I can make anything work. And so I said to this person, I said, look, I'm really pleased about coming into your classroom. And he said, well, you're really going to have to work on a couple of things. You have to work on your relationships with your children. And I thought, what? And then you have to do something else. And I thought, I can't be bothered with this. So I went and scanned the Gazette, and I saw a We2 teacher school down in Drummond, which is just outside of Invercargill. And so I went and applied for that and got it. And that was my first experience of leadership. I had no mentoring, no release time, nothing. I was single at the time, and that was really great because I used to go across and over home, which was in the schoolhouse next door. Then I'd come back just after tea, just after watching a bit of the news, and I'd turn the lights on and just carry on working. You talk about, that was all just part and parcel, wasn't it? It was just what we did. And then I moved up. I quite enjoyed that. That was, that was throwing me in the deep end. I had to go and put up with all kinds of things. Nobody ever prepared me for it. But it was just real trial and effort, and trial and learning from that experience. And then I went to a place called Mararoa, which is just out of Te Anau. It's 26 kilometres out of Te Anau. Isolated as anything. It's awful. It was being a single fellow. It was the isolation drove me up the ditch, and during that time, it was the era of the share market crash. And all of the teachers were put on, not teachers, all of the people that were put onto these blocks that the government had created, they were balloted on. And then what happened is they had huge interest rates, and there was a lot of loss and grieving and farms folding. It wasn't a nice time to go, but I really loved the place. So then I decided I wanted to come back to Christchurch, so I became the DP at a power school for 6 years. And then I decided I wanted to become a principal, so I became a principal of Heathcote Valley School for 13 years. And then I've moved over to Avonhead School, and I've been principal of Avonhead School for 6 years. Oh no, 8 years, I think. Yeah.
Time flies.
Yeah, time flies. Yeah. I guess one of the, just out of interest, Graham was talking about lots of things on our plate, and near the end of the year, you get these lovely, well-meaning people who come up to you, and all of you will know what I'm saying when you're in the situation where people say, "Are you winding down for Christmas?" I just want to bop that person in the nose, because it's wind up for Christmas. You know, you're just absolutely flat out. And then you get some real left fielders from the community, where I think that some of the community have been thinking about, I must go down to school and complain about something. And they've decided that because the year's just about coming to an end, I might go down and make an appointment and see Charles and share this problem that I have. And I just think, oh my goodness, all these left fielders coming out, as well as running a school, as well as planning for next year. And one of the things we have on our plate, and I'm not quite sure whether you've started, but we've started our refurbishment in buildings. So we've got 4 new classrooms being built on the site at the moment. I have two extra meetings a week. One is the on-site meeting for the buildings, and another meeting for we need to get our whole school plan completed by the end of this year, because we're first off the taxi stand. So we're incredibly busy, and it's not believe everything that Graham and Lisa said. It's actually incredibly busy, but I'm still in that thing. And somebody said to me, to know whether you're a really passionate and good teacher, you've got to be able to say, "Thank God it's Monday." And I think I still think that like that. And that's a good way to be. Yeah.
Can I just say something very, very quickly? We do attend probably a lot more things in the evening, but I just wanted to reassure you that ever since I was a beginning teacher to now, my hours of work have not changed. The level of responsibility definitely has, the things that I carry on my shoulders, but even as a beginning teacher, I worked after tea, not every night, probably 2 or 3 nights a week, and I worked on a Sunday afternoon. And I always made sure that I had at least one of the weeks and the holidays off in the 2-week blocks. And sometimes it wouldn't be, it would only be 2 or 3 days that I would go into school. So that's something that I've maintained. So, you know, you don't just, well, for me, you can't just start cramming more and more into that life. Although there might be, particularly at this time of the year, more evening activities, the hours of work, it's just as busy when you start teaching, and there are only so many hours in a week.
That may have been the case in '94, but in 1970 it wasn't the case, I can tell you. My workload increased considerably. I was back in the days when we were pretty laissez-faire in schools, and sadly, not sadly, it has changed. You remember those days? I mean, education's changed considerably.
Enormously.
Enormously.
This group of people who I'm about to introduce you to represent the next way.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
We feel very proud of these people because they are extraordinary. In the second, I'm talking to people off campus as well, because they've come here having a huge range of life experience, strong qualifications and degrees, and they have come here because they do want to make a difference, and they are here because they really have a passion for teaching and learning. So we want you to take notice of these people and to make sure that they're promoted in a sense too, because they represent our future. So they're going to ask you some questions now.
And I'll run with the mic to the person that's asking, so that the distance people. Grant's got one, I know, because he put it online, so we'll start with Grant. Just speaking to the heck for that.
Cool. Oh, I love being put on the spot. I'm just trying to remember what I wrote now. I knew I should have printed it out before I came in. One of the questions I did have for you as principals is that in your schools or sort of generally, do you know if there's much in the way of orientation programs for people who do win a position, particularly people who are beginning teachers and might need that sort of guidance in how to be a permanent teacher in a school? Yeah.
Coming back.
You're talking about when you're first appointed as a beginning teacher? That's right. Absolutely. So with your provisionally registered teaching program, At our school, and I'm sure at others, first of all, you're assigned a tutor teacher, and they will sit with you, work with you pre-starting, looking at all the school documentation. They'll also start a booklet with you, which is your induction program, and that's looking at your goals and weekly or fortnightly meetings. It's looking at how your PRT time, which schools are given, which is 5 hours a week, to help, give you advice and guidance, how that will be implemented and what will be achieved. That involves, I just want to be clear, that's not always about you coming out of the class for 1 day a week. It could be that your tutor and you go off-site and have a couple of hours together looking at other schools. It could be that your tutor is released to come in and observe you and then provide you with feedback. So that's all negotiated. The tutor teacher is paid a small amount to perform that duty for you and on behalf of the school. So most definitely, and often, your principal will check in with you, every few weeks just to see how that program's going and be getting some feedback from the tutor teacher as well.
I'd like to actually, I totally agree with Lisa, I always do. And you're hanging on to the purse. And the handbag. It's not a man bag. And so anyway, I'd like you to look at it from a different perspective. If you think about this as being a change for you, and it is, moving from college to a school, what would you expect for a child who is coming into your class? I'd need you to think about it as that's a change for them. Would you want that child to be stressed and anxious about coming and seeing you in the class, or coming to a new school, or having a change of teacher? If we think about it from their perspective, the biggest thing that gets in the road of people actually seeing a change or being involved in a change is being anxious or anxious about it, or fearful of failure. So I think it's really important that you guys, we understand that, and we see it as really important that we connect with you before, during and after you have joined our staff. We don't see you as a beginning teacher as an event, we see you as part of a process. So we work really hard to ensure that you're engaged with the school, the staff, before that happens. Think about the child and family that's new as well, we do that. We want you to do that as a teacher with a new child, so they aren't anxious or fearful about coming into the class. We don't want you to be in the same space. So we work really hard to help you be successful by ensuring that you're engaging with the staff, the systems, before, during and after you've been there a while. It's not just a one-off event. Here you are, here's a book. We talked, Ken, about our day. We got no support when we arrived. You just turned up and you were left on your own. In the 1970s, it was just absolutely pathetic what happened to you in a school. That's not the current environment. We work really hard for people not to be stressed or anxious in any change. And I want you as teachers to think about that and to think about the impact this is having on you joining our new staff. Think about that from the child's perspective when they're new in your class, new friends, new teaching, new things happening. So we've got to think of trying to see it in their shoes as well as your own, and realise the school is working really hard for you to be successful. That's our role.
Ultimately, you are our biggest asset, and I look at my 25, 30 teachers like my class of students. I have individual plans for them all. I know their strengths and weaknesses, I know their characteristics, and I know the way they tick. And I know what they'll need, the scaffolding they'll need, some of them around change, the ones that will be early adopters, the ones that won't, the ones that will need things explained a little bit differently to others. And ultimately, your success is my success, which ultimately is our students' success, which is actually what it's all about. So looking after you is top priority.
A couple of pieces of advice that I can give you. First of all, we do not expect you when you arrive at school to be perfect. And in actual fact, we expect you to make some really dumb things and dumb decisions. but you're going to have so much support and scaffolding around that they're actually not going to be apparent. The only person who's really going to worry about it is you, because you're going to say, oh, I should really be, working and performing up there. So my advice to you is don't be hard on yourself. You are going to make mistakes, and my thinking is that right across the school, all of my teachers at some stage make mistakes, and it's how you pick yourself up and you learn from that experience and move on. And the second thing is that I do not expect the beginning teacher to have a full program up and running in the first day or the second day. Don't get too hard on yourself. There are some great little strategies to kind of ease into the program, and I've often said, work and concentrate on, particularly in primary schools, work and concentrate on the literacy program. Get the reading program and the writing, and do a few tables and things like that, and complementary, while you're getting one aspect of the program set up, and then you work into the next one. So it may not be until about week 6 until you've got the full program running. Just kind of, pace yourself and don't set yourselves unreasonably high goals. Just be yourself and be quite happy that you're going to have a few mistakes, and you might have to ask somebody, and you might have to go and ask me, and I'm not going to write it down in an appraisal form. What I am going to do is I see that as a real strength that you have, that you're asking for advice. That's what we've got, all this combined experience here. We've got heaps of it.
Lots of mistakes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Thanks, buddy. So me and Marcus here were playing principal earlier and thinking what the qualities we would be looking for in a beginning teacher, assuming we want to take on a beginning teacher today. And I want to kind of bring that same question to you. What would be the most important qualities you'd look for, assuming you're not looking for, say, a speciality?
Yeah, I always am. I've just done a big appointment process, obviously, for next year. We had 9 appointments to make, and the interviews were all very much centred around qualities. My belief is that I can teach you how to teach, but I cannot teach you how to be flexible, how to be patient, how to be kind, how to be empathetic, how to be generous. So those are the things that I'm looking for. I asked lots of questions from referees around personal characteristics, and I asked people in the interviews to rate themselves. So I am looking for people who think outside the square. I'm looking for people who are collaborative team players, because we're all moving across the school into teams of 3. I'm looking for people who can be open and honest and communicate well, who are not afraid of having robust conversations. I'm looking for people who ultimately have some sort of sparkle with children. If their literacy and numeracy program is not quite up to par, I don't mind, because if they've got that thing when they are in front of a class, I will put all the supports in to make everything else happen. But that's not something I can teach them. That's something that you carry here. Oh.
I'm really the same with Lisa, and there's one of the things, and this is not a scientific way of actually working out, but you can actually you get a feel for the kinds of persons that's who and a feel for the kinds of qualities that that people have, even when you walk into the room, and so we're really looking for those, as you said, we're looking for those qualities. I'm looking for somebody with the X factor as well, and that is I can sense that intuitively. And as you're busy talking, I know whether people are actually being very genuine with me, or whether they're just telling me something about collaborative learning that they've read about. And I really like your honesty. That's probably a very important quality, so that when you're coming in, it's okay to say, look, I've actually haven't been in a collaborative environment, but I know all about it, and I'm really keen to be part of it. So don't think you have to come up with all the answers. But everything you said, Lisa, is what we do.
I'm really pleased Lisa listened to all the advice I gave her when she came up from Dunedin. Sorry, Liz.
I'll eat your house.
Yeah. Look, these guys, they're very profound words, and I agree with every one of them. And I keep going back to a conversation I had with an eminent professor in Toronto just a few years ago. And he simplified it very significantly. These guys have widened it out a wee bit. But he said, Graham, when I was on a study leave on seamless transitions or transitions over in Canada, and he was sitting down and he said, what questions do you ask teachers when you're employing them, or how do they select teachers at college? In very simple language, he says, what I'm looking for is that they like kids. If you don't like kids, don't go teaching. I mean, I can see smiles. That's great. And he said, and then I'm looking for people who can see things from a child's perspective. And if you can't put yourself in a child's shoes, then why are you teaching? And it's probably also widened out into putting yourselves in other people's shoes, the collaboration, working in teams, stuff like that. Then he said, Graham, what are you reading at the moment? I said, your work. He said, exactly, you're a long, ongoing learner. And if you look at it simply as, you have to like being around kids, and you like, widen it out, developing relationships with people and understanding people, and you want to make mistakes and learn from it and be reflective, then you've got all of the, and you're honest, and all the standard human dispositions that we look for in people who are making a contribution to society, then, hey, you've got everything we're looking for in an education. I'm old enough to retire, just about, but I've been in education for 43 years and been contributing to some super scheme somewhere, and I could go tomorrow. But I don't want to go because I love being at school and I love the job, and I've been doing it been in education for 55 years. That's a long time, and it excites me, and while it still excites me, I can make a difference, and I can see excitement in your faces in the room too, which is fantastic. So yeah, I just wanted to say something different today. Hold it, please. I'll take it this time. Who's coming next? Who's next? Now, all these guys are looking in an opposite direction. That's pretty cool. Here's the man with the roving microphone. Here we go.
My question would be, we already talked a lot about changing, and if you think about, we heard a lot about what changed in the last 20, 30, 40 years, and I would like to ask you, what is your prediction, or what do you think, how will education change in the next 10 or 20 years? Because I think that's a question, when we think only about the last 10 years, from blackboard to whiteboard to smartboard or whatever, I think, and we learned a lot about modern technologies, modern learning environment, modern learning strategies like Khan Academy, for example. And how do you think, from a perspective as a very experienced principal, the education will change in the next years?
I'm going first this time. That's a really interesting question. Education's changed considerably in my time. I mean, I had quite a few years with a bander and a cassette, and it's something you probably don't even know about. And it was only 25 years ago, I think, that they introduced computers, and they were driving off a tape deck. And we had chalk and dusters when I was at school that teachers threw more than they used to write with. I mean, the whole thing is going to change, is inevitable. But what won't change is the need for people to work together and get along. And if you're going to focus on the relationships, that is the key thing, is the relationships in school with everyone who you're working with, and a hunger to get the best out of a person so that that child will be a lifelong learner, continue to be a lifelong learner. That won't change. But everything around this is, and we're getting more honed in collaboration. Someone mentioned an open plan classroom. I started my first year at Harewood School in 1975 teaching in an open plan, but we didn't have the relationship stuff sorted then. the pedagogy wasn't there. You know, we were doing stuff, we did stuff without having a framework to hang it to. And I want to just introduce something to you now that I think is really important. It's, some of you will have heard of Julia Aitken with her vision, belief, principles to practice approach. You've heard of the golden circle approach, which is why, how and what. And everything you do needs to be hinged or connected back to a clear purpose. And then you have to have things that guide you in your practice. But if you start with practice and then try and frame it to something, you're actually starting at the wrong end. So that won't change. I mean, we're getting better at that, but you've got to be very clear and work with, I love working with people who start in the middle and work their way out. And then everything they do will look different, different schools and different teachers, but it actually fits with the culture in the school. And so if you want to be driven by having a good connection with and contribution to culture that's based on relationships, that supports people and the kids and the family and their progressions, and see it as a journey, not an event, then that won't change. I hope I've answered your question. It's about the technology.
Yeah.
Not just about the technology.
Quite often people say to me, kids have changed now, they're a lot different to what they used to be. I'm actually going to tell you from a real perspective, because Graham and I are the same age, but children haven't changed. They still need to be loved, they still need that relationships, and they still need, what has changed is the environment that they actually work in. But our kids are just as responsive to those kind of relationships and things. In fact, it's really interesting to know that if you're a powerful educator and you have respect and you have that relationship with a learner, your kids are going to learn far greater than anybody else will. And an example, and I'm just going to tell you a quick example, that my son was at a school, high school, and there was this particular English teacher, and he wasn't doing very well, and he was in about the year 12, and he wasn't doing very well. He didn't like English. He thought the teacher was gay and all that sort of kind of thing. And it was really interesting because we went along to the parent interview, and being educators, both my wife and I said, we insist that you sit there with us. He didn't want to come, but he came because we asked him to. Now, when we sat down, and the English teacher said, right, okay, James, well, you know, you've been sitting up at the back and you've been doing this and you've been doing this and you could really do a lot better if you did this. Do you know what? The entire time that she was talking to us, James was looking away. He didn't have one bit of eye engagement. He almost grunted when the teacher was talking to him. And we went to the economics. Now, James had really excelled in economics, and we went to economics, and the first thing that the economics teacher looked at James and said, James, you know that I have the deepest respect for you, don't you? And James said yes. For the entire interview time, James looked and responded and interacted with the teacher. That relationship that you have with children, some kids, and this is going to be your challenge, you're going to find it difficult to establish that deep, meaningful relationship. But I always believe that you'll get that connection with kids if you really work hard at it. Some kids you might have to work harder at. But if you have the kids at the centre of everything that you do and think, then you're going to establish that relationship. You are going to find a way, because that's the way kids learn. But I think in response to yours, where is learning going? I think we should still concentrate on the learning dispositions, and also when you have a look at the New Zealand curriculum, there's the key competencies, and those competencies are going to, if you work hard on those key competencies, they're all about developing the social skills and the relationship skills that kids are going to need for life, because that's what's going to help them to be lifelong learners.
I'll ask you a question. Do you like to be successful? Do you like success? Do you like to be? Do you like to fail or make mistakes? Not really. And a lot of people make decisions in life around the fear of failure, because quite often humiliation comes with that. Now, if you're going to be a teacher that's humiliating children, there will be no respect. What kids need to have from you is to know they're welcomed, and they will be helped or will be successful. And that's the base ingredient of developing a respectful relationship. Lisa.
Sorry, what was your name? Marcus, thanks. That was a great question. I mean, what is changing has to change, and has to change far more quickly than it is. I was very bored at school, and I have 2 children, and I see the years that they are bored at school and the years that they are not. We are still, unfortunately, continuing to tell the child what is in the present before allowing them to unwrap it themselves. And what I mean by that is the teaching style of, here's all the knowledge, you find nothing out yourself, there's no surprises. It's a little bit like having a present and being told what's in it before you get to unwrap it. Inquiry, and I get, again, we don't do inquiry, we're not doing inquiry, we are inquiring all the time. Our waltz are not, I am learning to, it's, how will I do this? And it's always framed in a questioning, inquisitive way. I am a big fan of technology because I think that the things that it enables students to do are not substitution. They are way ahead of that. There's creativity, collaboration, communication, opening up the world to them in a way that we didn't see when we were at school. So I'm really passionate about, we've got one-to-one devices happening next year from years 4 to 8. I'm really passionate about pushing those boundaries, not substitution, but actually where are we going on that SAMR model to actually make sure that we are continually energising and inspiring our kids, because across the board we don't push them enough. We don't entice and energise them enough, not yet. So I think it's great that it is all changing. Okay, well, having just looked at 100, and 60 of them were beginning teachers. Firstly, I'm not dear sir or madam. I'm Lisa Dillon Roberts. I've spent a lot of time putting the application pack out to you to talk to you, so please talk to me. Make sure you've looked at my website, our school website. Make sure you know about our school values. Make sure your letter tells me why you want to come to Merrin School. Not, dear sir, madam, I am applying for this Scale A position that I know that you've sent off to 30 schools. When I have that pile, and I did this with the board members, it was late at night, and I said to a board member, you're going to have to start getting ruthless. They've all got a teaching philosophy, and many of them will sound the same. They're all passionate, excited, and want a job and are hungry for it. Many of them have got a wee part-time job, and they'll tell you how great they are at it and how honest and reliable. Something in that covering letter has got to spring up and say, wow, they moved to that pile, because otherwise we have to get through these, and we've got 2 hours to look at them. So please try and come and see us. I know that you'll get knocked back. It's a busy time of the year, but I look out for it. If I see someone and I hear that transaction happening in the school office, I will walk out of my door to shake your hand, because what I do when I've done that is I go back to my pile and I write a wee comment straight away on the top of your CV. Very nicely presented, warm smile, warm. And that's just that little edge that you've got right from the start, because there's something personal in it. The biggest advice I can give you is making it personal, just making it as personal as you can. The more time and effort you put into doing that, the more shot you've got. So yeah, that's my advice. But the dear sir, madam, you go straight to the no pile. I don't even look at. I don't even look at anything else.
And guys, I know that you're sort of flooding the market. There's lots of jobs that you want to do. But if I get dear Mr. Collins with a cover letter, and this has happened before, where even the letter's not actually addressed to me, that just goes into the no pile. But I think the most important thing is that you actually, when it comes to a CV, it's something that's really going to stand out. And I want you to keep thinking that your CV does not help you get the job. What it helps you get is an interview for the job. And so I think sometimes if you make it too wordy, you're kind of overstating yourself, because just leave a few tantalising bits in your CV that I'm going to say, I want to interview this person. I want to hear and see more of it, what this person has to say.
It's interesting, we've mentioned cover letter and CV. And the CV is generic. The CV is the thing that you will add to and you'll probably use for a number of jobs that you apply for. The letter that Lisa and Charles are talking about is the thing that connects with the person you're writing to and the school and what they're looking for. That's where you include the stuff that is about this position, not all of the positions. Does that make sense? You've probably already got that. But we do see some people who put more effort into the CV than they do into the covering letter. Be yourself. Don't try and be somebody you're not. I would suggest you don't need to go and pay a lot of money to get an expert whiz-bang CV that has been produced by some technological person who sits on the other side of Christchurch, because that's not you. There's no need to do that. We want to know that this is a genuine application from you and not something that's contrived to make it look really good. There was one other thing I was going to say. Example, I quote this quite frequently. I've had over the years applications from, dare I say it, men who have used second-hand envelopes and have got some of their Marmite from breakfast on the outside of it. I can tell you which R file that went into. I don't even remember opening it, but I thought, what a joke. And I put it in the rubbish bin, to be fair. I'm being in truth a wee bit. I did have a look inside. And the covering letter was the worst letter I've ever received as a principal. And I thought, you're trying to get a job? No way. And so, you've got to actually create an impression of somebody who's a professional. And we haven't touched on professional practice versus teaching practice today, but professionalism is a really important ingredient of being a teacher. For me, for you, work out what professionalism means for you. You think about somebody, the people who hit the media these days, and they might be fantastic teachers, but they're not professionals. They have a Facebook page which shows them being high or drunk or whatever, and do you think we don't look at that? We know how to look at it. We will find out. We will look on Facebook pages. We find out from other people who can connect. We look for that stuff. So, if you're actually showing that you're a person who doesn't actually act in the best light in your private life, we're unlikely to employ you. So it's not just what you send us, it's what we can find out. And these days, you might think we're technophobes. I'm not a technophobe, goodness gracious, you can tell that. I've got an iPhone 6 and an iPad and all other stuff. And,
It's a wealthy technophobe.
I mean, I live for my technology, and I love technology, and I think it's really important, but there's about the person first, and the other stuff comes after that. Anyway, Charles, but I just thought I'd introduce that about professionalism.
There are two things, and I'm not quite sure whether this is the case with you guys, but first of all, some people when they write a CV, they actually put down some links so that we can go to these websites to go and see all these kind of things. I've got to say that when we go through the process of selecting the people that we want to interview, like Lisa, we have 100 CVs. I haven't got time to go to your links and see all the kinds of things. So what I want to see are the nuts and bolts within your CV. That's the thing that's going to make a decision. If I'm a little bit more curious, I might actually go to those things a little bit later. But to be really honest, I want to see in the CV the reason why I should be interviewing you, rather than me having to go and do a whole lot more work. Because like Lisa, in the last appointment rounds, we had 2 board members and 2 staff members, and it's really difficult for us all to sit around the computer and go through links and things. So that's just from my point of view. And the second thing that I wanted to say is that we also put into our job application package a person specification Now, there are two things that we put in. One is the job description. That's the tasks that you'll be doing. It's pretty generic, the same kind of tasks in each of our schools. But the person specification is the person that we want for the job. And it will have some qualities, like one of the things is we would like the person to have a great sense of humour. Because we would have thought about it. For example, we had a Year 7 and Year 8 team leaders job position, and we thought a great deal about what kind of qualities this person has to have that would complement the remaining team. We've got a really great team, but there's just at the team. These are the qualities that we want in the team leadership. And if you're smart enough, you'll actually look at those things, if there's a person specification sitting there, and you'll actually, as Graham says, write to those things, because you know what qualities we're looking for, and there may be some things that you've done, some things that you're doing at the moment that you actually want to go and mention that actually highlight the person's specification.
Charles, I don't look at websites either because I just don't have time. I really get involved in the letter very deeply, and I'll scan the CV and look for things that provide evidence of that person having the right dispositions. Some people say, do I include quotes and things in my CV or in my application letter? If that's what you like to do, do it, but try and perhaps have it in a slightly different font or italicised. It's one thing to say that you're good at something, it's another thing to be able to provide evidence for it. And someone else we see lots of quotes from being on teaching practice and from other places that will illustrate that you have the disposition we're looking for. To say that you've just taught in a class isn't the same as talking about having a quote that talks about how you've connected and developed relationships with people. That's what we're still going back to, those dispositions. So choose quotes that support the dispositions rather than tasks that you've done. Does that make sense?
Can I just grab that?
You can.
We had this discussion last term in one of the profs groups, and I just want to put the question on behalf of the person who asked it and the group, which was as to what you keep into your CV and as to what you leave out. And the two schools of thought is that everything's in there, warts and all, or that it's doctored and things that you perhaps are embarrassed about or things that you've failed. Well, obviously the academic transcript is a transcript and it shows where you've got B's or D's or what have you. But just an acknowledgement of things that you're not good at, or that, and I'm suspecting that from the way, particularly Graham, you talked about the no and the, well, maybe not yet. It's going to fall down into it's how you frame it. It's not what's actually happened, but it's how you frame it. But what are your views on that sort of degree of honesty in a CV or a letter, sort of owning up to those things that perhaps you don't, that are not, everyone sells themselves on their strengths, but also those things that you feel that you need to develop, or that you need to draw the attention that hey, I didn't do so well in this, or because that was a genuine question from.
I think what we're trying to see here is that you're an ongoing learner, and I've made more than my share of mistakes in life. And I had a brother who turned up at high school 4 years after me, and he's introduced with a teacher saying he's operating under a very dark shadow coming to this school. And hell, I hadn't even had my 7th form year at that point, and I got kicked out of high school at the end of the year after I'd been accepted for college. So I got kicked out. And now look at me.
I was a nightmare at school.
I was absolute horror. I was an errant child. The principal of the school I went to says that the two worst students, this has been recorded. The two worst students he ever had anything to do with in 45 years both turned out to be principals. And the irony in this is that we both sit on the New Zealand Principals Federation National Executive. How about that? And yeah, so
Egging out the house wasn't too bad.
I'm poacher turned gamekeeper, not really. Lisa. Must be.
I think we were bored, to be fair, at high school.
Correct. And mistreated. We weren't respected.
No, it was very different.
And boy, did I act out.
Yeah. I would, first of all, I would shy away from putting anything that you haven't done well, because once you actually have your qualification, personally, I'm not interested in your marks at college because you have a qualification. I don't, I'm not interested in your marks at high school. I'm interested in hearing about those persons, how you relate to those person specifications and what you're going to bring to the students at our school. If I want to, I can do my homework into all that. I can ask you at the interview. I always ask you a question around something that you feel is an area that you need to work on. Always ask you about things that perhaps haven't gone so well for you during training. So I don't think it needs to be there in black and white. I think it's your best, absolute best foot forward. I'm not interested in your transcript. Some principals probably would be. So do you put it in or don't you? Well, that's entirely up to you. Or do you just put a little note to say these are all available should you wish to see them? Just very quickly going back to my latest job vacancy, I asked for pixie dust. I asked for people to bring it, show me what they could do creatively, bring me that special sparkle. 2 people talked about that out of the 100 in their applications. 2 people actually put glitter in the application, and I know that's cheesy, but they got interviews because that's what I'd asked for, and they listened.
Fine.
Quick question. This will be the last question, I think.
Sure. Just in that similar vein of what to put in the CV, a lot of us being in the graduate program have sort of completely other careers that we've had before teaching. Is that the kind of thing that you just hint at in a CV, or do you want like a big section dedicated to that? Because it's hard to keep the pages down when I'm talking about a different career entirely from education as well.
Include your previous experience. Include what you do to relax, to be you. You know, your balance in life is really important to your other interests.
I don't want boring teachers.
No, we've got boring principals. I'm joking, mate.
Charles.
Oh, no. I'll save him for another day. Yeah, but that's really good. We get asked this question quite frequently about the difference between someone who's graduate and someone who's been through a degree program, about someone who's younger or older coming into the profession. It doesn't make any damn difference. I mean, I'm sorry, I've looked across, but I mean, I've just employed someone from your group who's got 4 kids, and Jane's not here today, but she's from your group, and we've employed her for next year, and she's changed career, and she's got 4 children. And pardon?
No, you're one of the grads, so she's one of the close students.
She's one. Oh, she watching this, is she?
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Jane.
It was very naughty at high school. Did you get that?
Shh. But congratulations, and it's fantastic. And we did that because of her love for kids and the previous experiences she brings to that. Because to be fair, I think that sometimes it's quite daunting to work with parents, and parents can be quite challenging for people who haven't had life experiences. And for those in this room who haven't, you've got a wealth of knowledge from university and other things as well. But it's the whole package. It's not one thing. So don't think that someone else has got an advantage or that you're disadvantaged because of age, because of gender, because of your experiences. We just want the right person in front of kids, to be fair.
If you have been in retail, for instance, that tells me that you've got great customer service, that you're used to dealing with people. Those are the things that I would bullet point underneath that experience. If you've been in, in something in ICT, or I don't know what sort of things you might be bringing, even if you've raised your own family, the things that you've learned from that, just pull it all back into what it will mean for you and what it will mean for the students at our schools. Because it's great to have lots of strings to your bow, and that's a really sell them, definitely.
Just first of all, I'd just like to say how heartening it is to feel, I put myself in my students' shoes really, and just that sort of sense of knowing what is the expectation. Like we fill up the students with all sorts of expectations in the university environment. But what you've really confirmed for us, I think, is that being who we are and being proud of what we've achieved, and that we are starting out in this career, and the reasons why we're starting out in this career, that they're the things that it's all about, and that we're all people. Like, they're not frightening, are they? You know, like, they're our leaders. They're our leaders, but they are very welcoming, and they're looking for those sorts of qualities that you've all got. But I still wonder, and when I first started out, I had this belief that I was going to choose the school for me. And I still believe in that to a certain extent. I still believe that you have got as much choice as they have. So get out there and start choosing the school and the environment and the dream, the beginning of this amazing journey. It's just a phenomenal journey. In a classroom with children, you've just been out there. To have your own, like, you've done the most difficult thing, to go into other people's classrooms at this time of the year and be told that you have to take control for 3 weeks. And you've achieved it. That's the biggest thing, really. Like, once, you know, the next part of this journey is not easier, but you are in control of the whole thing. And so thank you very much for that. I found it very inspiring. And I know that, did you want to say something else?
Actually, I thought...
Oh, you did? Yeah, all right, I could feel it there, tickling away.
Oh, no, you can't shut me up. I know these people very well. They're good friends. Look, the thing, and that's the other thing about this career. I mean, I've got lifelong friends in education. I socialise with these guys from
People
time to
that
time.
I graduated with.
Yeah, and it's really important. Look, we're looking for people who love kids, who can see things from their perspective and are lifelong learners. We used this term before. We want you to be successful. We want you to be successful. We will welcome you, and we want you to be successful. So if you're looking for a yardstick, a litmus test, and looking for a school, you want to be welcomed at that school and get a feeling you're going to be successful. And that would be something, if I was applying for jobs now, I would want to be, you think that I was given every opportunity to be successful, and I was being openly welcomed. And I'd just like to finish on that, because I think it's really important from your perspective.
Sam's going to say a word. On behalf of everybody. It's very good of you to do that. Yes.
All right. On behalf of the on-campus and Flow students, thank you guys very much for taking time out of your busy schedules to talk to us about this and shed some insight and some light on the next step in our careers. So thank you very much.
Are we going to just after 11?